This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman in San Francisco with Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. I'm in San Francisco for the national theatrical release of the documentary about Democracy Now! Called Steal This Story, Please. We're headed to California's state capital, to Sacramento today. The film will be showing at the Tower Theater in Sacramento at 7 p.m. I'll be doing the Q&A afterwards with the film's director, Tia Lesson. And then tomorrow, the film will show at the Roxy in San Francisco. I'll be introducing it at 6. And then in Berkeley at the Rialto Elmwood, and we'll be doing a Q&A afterwards. On Thursday, we'll be in Seattle at SIFF. That's the Seattle International Film Festival on Thursday night and on Friday night. And then we're headed to Portland, Oregon, and beyond. It's continuing to play in New York at the IFC and all over the country in Los Angeles and beyond. You can go to democracynow.org to get the latest details where I will be. As we continue now to look at President Trump's immigration crackdown, we turn to an in-depth investigation into the law enforcement response to protesters. In cities across the country, from Los Angeles to Chicago to Minneapolis, residents took to the streets to oppose the militarized immigration sweeps, enforcement tactics, and violence by ICE and Border Patrol agents. The investigation by AC Thompson for ProPublica is headlined, Caught in the Crackdown. As arrests at anti-ICE protests piled up, prosecutions crumbled. The accompanying Frontline documentary is Caught in the Crackdown. This is the trailer.
Immigration officials conducted several raids and arrested dozens of people.
An investigation into the Trump administration's months-long crackdown.
Are you encountering a lot of resistance?
Most I've ever seen.
The pushback.
They are creating the emergency and the crisis that we then need to deal with.
I'm asking, who's detaining me?
And the fallout.
President Trump and I, along with others in the administration, have recognized that certain improvements could and should be made.
That was the trailer for the new ProPublica Frontline film, Caught in the Crackdown. In a minute, we'll be joined by the investigative reporter AC Thompson to discuss what they found when they looked into the tactics, the arrests, the legal cases, and impact of these protests. But first, another clip. This scene is from Minneapolis, shortly after Renee Good was shot and killed by ICE officer Jonathan Ross.
We were reporting in the neighborhood where Renee Good had been killed. Agents were surrounding and questioning a man.
Take your guns home! We don't want guns in our neighborhoods!
We don't need that hardware. It's ridiculous.
People were coming out of their houses.
Get the out! You don't belong here!
The agents started to leave.
Get out of here! Move out! You heard them!
One protester was pepper sprayed in the face at close range. I spoke with the man they were questioning, Christian Molina. He said the officers had rammed his vehicle.
They hit my car for no reason, man. They hit me. What happened? They followed me for no reason, hit my car. They looked at me and they decided to pull me over for no reason. You believe that?
That Ford SUV?
Yep. I'm a U.S. citizen.
Suddenly,
Oh, here, careful.
someone threw a snowball in the direction of the agents. One of them tossed a tear gas canister into the crowd.
People live here!
An agent pepper sprayed protesters and a news photographer up close. Another fired pepper balls into the crowd. I was hit 3 times.
I got shot repeatedly with pepper balls.
I was in the car, they threw the underneath the car. Yes, I can't see. Shame on you.
As they left, an agent shot pepper spray from his window. It hit my colleagues in the face.
You need this? Here. Give me the camera. Give me the
Water! I got water!
Was that spray? Did they just spray from the UV?
In the months I'd been covering this story, I'd seen the same pattern everywhere we went. Federal agents using weapons like tear gas and pepper spray against protesters and bystanders. The courts would try to rein them in, but they'd move on to the next city and do the same things. On local TV, Bovino was unapologetic.
We're here to conduct that Title VIII mission. It won't stop, despite rioters, agitators, and vast amounts of violence against federal officers. We're not going to stop.
There's also a scene from the Frontline documentary where AC Thompson shows this same footage from Minneapolis to former law enforcement officials. First, Christy Lopez, who spent years investigating law enforcement misconduct for the Justice Department Civil Rights Division.
I showed footage from the scene to Christy Lopez.
You're tear gassing a neighborhood! People live here!
We see just use of excessive force after use of excessive force. In no scenario is it okay to be pepper spraying people as you're leaving the scene. It's just they're mad, they're scared, you know, they're able to get away with it, so they're just using the power they have to use force against people.
Then AC Thompson shows the footage to Chris Magnus, a former head of Customs and Border Protection, who once oversaw Bovino. Magnus also served as a police chief in multiple cities.
Pretty awful. You know, I mean, one of the things in policing when it comes to use of force, it's proportionality. Is the force really proportional to what you're receiving or what you're dealing with? People may well get under your skin under a lot of circumstances. You don't like it, but professionals don't react to it.
Those were clips from the new ProPublica Frontline documentary Caught in the Crackdown, now streaming for free on YouTube, pbs.org, and the PBS app. The ProPublica investigation by AC Thompson is headlined, Caught in the Crackdown, as arrests at anti-ICE protests piled up, prosecutions crumbled. AC Thompson is the investigative reporter on this. AC, if you can just summarize, I mean, you very dramatic footage here. You were in Minneapolis right after an ICE officer, Jonathan Ross, killed Renee Good. Talk about the protests from Chicago to Minneapolis to Los Angeles, what people were doing when they were arrested, not to mention brutalized and in some cases killed, and then how their prosecutions crumbled.
You know, it was fascinating for me to watch from June 2025 in Los Angeles to the fall in Chicago to winter in Minneapolis, and following the immigration sweeps led by then Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino and the rest of the immigration agencies, and looking at the protests that were erupting around the country. It was this situation where there was allegations of a massive surge in assaults on federal agents. The Department of Justice was labeling the people who were in the streets as domestic terrorists, as agitators, as extremists. They were rounding them up in large numbers, arresting people from city to city to city. And then what we would see after these arrests would happen is, as these cases move through the court system, the allegations made against the individuals tended to fall apart under scrutiny. So we looked at 300 arrests in these various cities and found that more than a third of them had collapsed. Prosecutors had decided to dismiss them. They had refused to even file charges in the first place, or juries acquitted the defendants. And so the claims that the government was making about this massive surge in assaults, about all these people being terrorists and domestic extremists and all this sort of stuff, it just didn't match up to the reality that, one, that we were seeing on the ground as we were filming, and two, what the courts were finding as they looked at the evidence and prosecutors looked at the evidence and said, this is not going to hold up. We're dismissing this case.
And AC, you mentioned Chicago. There were, you report there were 109 arrests there, but prosecutors eventually dropped 75. That's nearly 3/4 of all the people that arrested. The charges just disappeared.
And that's a conservative number too. I think that number is going to grow in time as we get more evidence about exactly what's happened. But yeah, the vast bulk of the arrests in Chicago have been dropped by prosecutors. And the handful of cases that are still going on are still working through the system, but there seem to be some problems with some of those as well. Experts told us, law enforcement experts, former Department of Justice, civil rights personnel said, look, this looks like a pattern and practice of bad arrests, of unjustified arrests. And that looks like what we're seeing across the country. When you have arrest after arrest that doesn't hold up, that prosecutors don't have faith in the evidence, that juries don't have faith in the evidence, that's telling you that this is sort of more than just your normal run-of-the-mill police effort. These are bad arrests.
And how do these compare to the normal rates for U.S. attorneys or federal authorities in criminal cases?
I mean, that's what stands out so much, right? Is in federal court, federal prosecutors win more than 90% of their cases. Very few are dismissed. They lose very, very few at trial. They are incredibly successful. This wave of arrests stemming from the immigration sweeps and the protests against them, they've been very unsuccessful with. They're having problems in city after city trying to do these cases. And that means, you know, that is a reflection of, in all likelihood, unjustified arrests being made by Border Patrol agents, ICE agents, other federal agents that frankly don't normally deal with protests, with crowds, with these kinds of situations that they've been thrust into over the past year.
AC Thompson, we want to thank you for being with us, investigative reporter with ProPublica and the PBS series Frontline. His new documentary, Caught in the Crackdown, is streaming on YouTube, PBS.org, and the PBS app. We thank you for being with us. He's talking to us from San Francisco. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.